They treated their victims as worthless and beyond any respect. Today, a judge at Liverpool Crown Court sentenced the men convicted of grooming and sexually exploiting young girls in Rochdale to jail terms ranging between 4 and 19 years.
He told the men that their crimes were callous and repugnant. One victim spent 4 years seeking justice after being repeatedly raped when she was just 15.
At first I thought, you know, is there much point in going through it all again? But I did it because they'd just carry on. I just hope now that people realise that it does happen and how it happens.
Police have said that as many as 47 girls could have been victims of the gang, and it's emerged that as many as 50 men could have been involved. Well, our chief reporter Dave Guest has been following the case and was in court to see the 9 men sentenced, and he's here now. Dave.
Annabelle. Well, these are the 9 men who faced a judge today to discover their fate after being convicted of crimes ranging from rape to trafficking. Let's take a closer look at some of them.
Kabir Hassan was one of the youngest on trial. He's 25 and worked in a takeaway where he raped his young victim. He got 9 years for that and for conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with a child. The longest sentence went to a 59-year-old who we can't name for legal reasons. He wasn't in court to learn he'd been given 19 years for rape, trafficking and sexual assault. He refused to face what he described as a racist judge. The judge described him as a hypocritical bully. Abdul Qayyam was once regarded as a pillar of his local community. He's now serving 5 years for conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with a child. Abdul Rauf, a taxi driver and former preacher, got 6 years for trafficking. Adil Khan got 8 years for trafficking, but his lawyer wasted no time in announcing he'd be lodging an appeal. He told waiting reporters the fact that the BNP leader Nick Griffin had issued details of verdicts via Twitter before they were announced in court cast doubts over the jury.
We are left with no option but to conclude that the confidentiality of the jury's deliberations must have been breached, and we submit the proper inference to be drawn is that there must have been improper communication from within the jury room to Nick Griffin and perhaps others.
Well, the judge, Gerald Clifton, says he's satisfied there was no leak from the jury room. That's why he received the verdicts. Sentencing the men, he said they'd shown no compassion for their young victims, adding, "All of you treated them as though they were worthless." Well, this case has attracted a great deal of attention from right-wing groups who latched on to the fact the defendants were all Asian and their victims white. The BNP had a small number of protesters outside court today demanding justice for grooming victims. But their leader's controversial pre-verdict tweet could have derailed this trial. So I asked him where he got his information.
That information came to me and I tweeted it on in good faith from 3 different people who were outside the court demonstrating.
You didn't check it with the court yourself? You didn't check it with anybody official yourself?
There's no possibility of doing that under those situations.
You could have rung the court. We ring the courts all the time. You could have asked, are the juries still out? Are there any verdicts? And it's not a state secret. You could have done that, but you didn't. By tweeting that information, you potentially undermined the trial. You undermined what you say you stand for, which is bringing these perpetrators to justice.
There is no possibility of that trial being undermined, because I also tweeted that if people haven't yet been found guilty, they are innocent until they're proven guilty. And this, I say again, is the BBC and the rest of the media trying desperately to find something, a red herring, to throw to the public to make them think about that.
So the trial is over, but the repercussions continue.
Dave, thanks very much indeed. That's Dave Guest, our chief reporter. One of the big issues that Dave referred to there is that of race. Just how significant a factor was it?
8 of the 9 men were born in Pakistan and came here as adults. The other was from Afghanistan. Well, Nick Griffin also told us he's been warning about this problem for years, but has been consistently ignored for political reasons.
The Labour Party have spent decades taking political advantage of an increasingly large Muslim bloc vote and refusing to criticise people within that community in any way, shape or form. And it's a huge cheat now for the Labour Party to come and have a go at me. The Labour Party was in power in these places a decade and more ago. They should have spoken out. They should have stood up for these girls, and it's to their eternal shame that they didn't.
Nick Griffin there. Well, a little earlier I spoke to the Labour MP for Rochdale, Simon Danchuk. I put it to him that the BNP have reacted to the issue of Asian men grooming young white girls quicker than the mainstream parties.
Well, the extreme right-wing parties are attempting to exploit this situation in the hope of gaining some sort of political momentum.
A lot of people agree with what they're saying, though.
Well, but what they're saying isn't accurate and it isn't true, and they're trying to cause mischief, to put it politely. I think mainstream politicians should talk more about it, and I think it's important to talk about the various aspects of it, where there's been failure in local government, where there's been failure within the police, but also the issue of race, and that's why I've been raising this issue.
Why haven't you raised it before? Have you done anything about it?
Well, I've been the Member of Parliament since May 2010, and since then I've spoken to the local authority and I've spoken to the police about it. There's no doubt about it that the perpetrators of these crimes were of Asian origin, and I think that there's a subculture within the Asian community, a very small group of men who have a very warped perspective in relation to women, and that led them to treat these young, vulnerable girls in the way that they did.
How much responsibility is there on Asian community leaders to try and get this under control? Because you yourself have said there's a subculture within their community.
It's down to everybody to address this issue. The agencies involved, the men themselves, parents have to play a part, but you're right, the Asian community has to play a part.
Do you think there may be more people involved in this in Rochdale?
There's no doubt about it that there's a good number of people have been involved in this. I'm assured that the police are thoroughly investigating it.
So we may see more arrests, we may see more people, maybe separate from these people, but engaging in the same kind of practices?
Yeah, there are other cases that have already come forward that I've been aware of, and where court cases have been successful and people have been prosecuted. And I've no doubt that Greater Manchester Police are now, unlike in 2008, they are now thoroughly investigating every lead and doing a good job, as they have done in this case, in terms of bringing people to court and seeing justice done.
Simon Tanchuk, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So that's what the local MP has had to say, but do his constituents accept his view that a small minority of men in the Asian community have a very warped perspective of women?
Well, Peter Marshall has been to Rochdale and Haywood to gauge reaction to those comments and to find out how this case has affected everyday life there.
Everyone in Rochdale has a view on this awful case, some not broadcastable. But is their local MP right to say there's a very small subculture of Asian men with a warped perspective on women? Do you accept his view?
Yeah, I do. The guy shouldn't have done this, whoever did it. I think they should be sent back to Pakistan, whoever did it.
In all societies, there's some bad people, some good people.
It could be any nationality, I think.
Whether you're Asian, whether you're white, whether you're any colour, it's irrespective. The main thing is, it's going on everywhere.
The subculture that I think he's alluding to is one of disrespect, disregard, and I'd say prejudice and discrimination. And that kind of, those kind of people who've got those kind of traits exist in all communities.
In Haywood, where the grooming began, life goes on, but lives have been changed. Stephen Campbell runs a taxi company in Haywood. Many of his drivers are Asian.
We've got a lot of good, honest, hard-working taxi drivers here who are just trying to make a living. All they want to do is come to work, earn the money, pay the bills and go home, you know, without having stones and bricks thrown at the cars and being threatened.
And taxi driver Mohammed Iqbal has first-hand experience of trouble while simply trying to earn a living.
We just got abused, you know, the people thinking, you know, we are all same. That's what's wrong.
It must make life very difficult.
Very difficult. This problem. But we not got the people from local people any abuse. That's the other thing. From Haywood people, like, fine, we not got any problem from them. It's just the people coming from outside.
On the streets, at bus stops, at BBC Radio Manchester's outside broadcast, all talk is of a crime that shocked the country. Police insist victims were chosen for their vulnerability, not their ethnicity. And some say raising the race issue doesn't help. The hope in Haywood is that now that the guilty men have been sentenced, the town will be able to move forward. It doesn't want to be forever defined by their awful crimes. Peter Marshall, BBC North Tonight, Haywood.